For 730 days, I lived inside a perfect lie. My daughter-in-law swore my son was leading a top-secret infrastructure project in London. She showed me photos of his apartment. She read me his emails. She even brought me expensive scotch she claimed he sent from Heathrow duty-free. I believed her. I believed her right up until a terrified delivery driver shoved a dirty package into my hands at a farmer's market and whispered 6 words that shattered my world. He is not in London, Harrison. What I found inside that box did not just break my heart. It unleashed a fury that would burn her entire house of cards to the ground. If you think you know your family, think again. Hit that like button if you believe the truth always comes out, and subscribe because you are not going to believe where my son actually was. The collision nearly knocked the wind out of me. I was standing near a stall selling organic honey in the middle of the crowded Evanston Farmers Market when a shoulder slammed into my back with the force of a linebacker. I stumbled forward, dropping the bag of apples I had just purchased. My first instinct was irritation. I am 70 years old, but I still pride myself on my stability and awareness, yet I never saw him coming. I turned around, ready to demand an apology, but the words died in my throat. The man who had hit me was trembling. He looked like he had not slept in a week. His gray hoodie was stained with grease, and his eyes were darting around the crowd with the frantic energy of a trapped animal. He was clutching a package wrapped in rough brown paper against his chest as if it were a bomb. I opened my mouth to ask if he was all right, but he lunged forward, invading my personal space. He grabbed my hand with an icy grip and shoved the package into my arms. It was heavy, much heavier than it looked. He leaned in so close I could smell stale coffee and fear on his breath. "Are you Harrison Stone?" He did not wait for an answer. He just looked at my eyes and seemed to find the confirmation he needed. "Take it. It is yours now. Just open it alone." I stood there frozen in the middle of the Saturday morning shoppers, clutching this strange object. The man was already backing away, but he stopped for 1 second. He looked over my shoulder, scanning the parking lot, and then his gaze snapped back to me with an intensity that chilled my blood. "Do not let Beatrice see this. Do not trust her. Nash is not in London." The mention of my son's name hit me harder than the physical collision. Nash, my boy. The successful architect who had been working in the UK for 2 years. Before I could ask this stranger how he knew my son, or why he was lying about London, he turned and sprinted away. He vanished into the crowd just as a police cruiser rolled slowly down the adjacent street. I watched him go, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked down at the package. There was no return address, just my name scrawled in black marker. Harrison Stone. I barely had time to slide the package inside my wool coat before a shadow fell over me. A low purr of a high-performance engine cut through the chatter of the market. I knew that sound. I turned to see an obsidian black Mercedes S-Class pulling up to the curb right next to where I was standing. The window, tinted so dark it was illegal, slid down with a smooth electric hum. Beatrice sat behind the wheel. My daughter-in-law looked flawless as always. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun, and she wore oversized sunglasses that cost more than my first car. She looked like the picture of suburban success, a success she claimed was funded by my son's high salary overseas. She lowered her sunglasses just enough to look at me with eyes that were sharp and calculating. "Dad," she called out, but her voice lacked any real warmth. It was a performance. "Who was that man? I saw someone running away from you. Was he bothering you?" My chest tightened. For a split second, I considered telling her. I considered holding up the package and asking who the man was and what he meant about Nash. But years of experience in my former life as a forensic accountant kicked in. You develop an instinct for deception. You learn to recognize when numbers do not add up, and right now the equation of my life felt wrong. The fear in that man's eyes had been genuine. The coldness in Beatrice's eyes was equally real. I forced a smile onto my face, a smile I had used across interrogation tables years ago. Just a homeless fellow asking for change, Beatrice? I think he was a bit confused. I gave him a few dollars and he ran off when he saw the police car. Beatrice stared at me. Her gaze dropped from my face to my chest. I felt the sharp corner of the package digging into my ribs under my coat. I held my breath. She was scanning me, looking for a lie. She was not just a concerned daughter-in-law. She was a warden. Finally, she smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. You are too generous, Harrison. You really should be more careful. These people can be dangerous. Get in. I have a surprise for you. Nash sent more money. He wants us to look at that remodeling contractor today. I opened the door and climbed into the leather interior of the car that my son was supposedly paying for. As I buckled my seatbelt, I pressed my arm firmly against my side, securing the package. Beatrice pulled away from the curb, merging aggressively into traffic. She started talking about the new marble countertops she wanted for the kitchen, about how well Nash was doing, about how he had just been promoted to regional director. Lies. The man in the market said Nash was not in London. Beatrice said he was promoted in London. One of them was lying. And as I looked at Beatrice's manicured hands gripping the steering wheel, so tight her knuckles were white, I realized something terrifying. The stranger had nothing to gain by lying to me. Beatrice had everything to lose. I sat in silence, nodding at her stories while my mind raced. I needed to get home. I needed to get away from her prying eyes. And most of all, I needed to open this package, because whatever was inside was the key to a truth I had been blind to for 2 years. And if my son was not in London, then where the hell was he? The leather seat of the Mercedes felt cold against my back, but sweat was trickling down my spine. Beatrice was driving with one hand on the wheel and the other gesturing wildly as she spun her latest fabrication. She was talking about Nash, my son, her husband, and the supposed glamour of his life in London. "Oh, Dad, you should have heard him this morning," she gushed, glancing at me with a smile that looked painted on. "He called right before I left to pick you up. He is just over the moon." The firm finally announced it. He is the new regional director for all of Western Europe. Can you believe it? Our Nash running the show across the entire continent. I nodded slowly, keeping my right arm pressed tight against my ribs, shielding the package hidden inside my coat. "That is wonderful news, Beatrice," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "He must be traveling constantly then. Flying from London to Paris, Berlin to Rome." "Exactly," she chirped, turning onto the highway. "He is in the air more than he is on the ground. He says he practically lives in first class now." The lie was so blatant it almost made me laugh out loud. Nash hated flying. He didn't just dislike it, he had a severe vestibular disorder. Since he was a boy, even a short flight from Chicago to Florida would leave him bedridden with vertigo and nausea for 2 days. The idea of him hopping between European capitals like a jet-setter was not just unlikely, it was physically impossible. If he were truly doing that job, he would be in a hospital, not a boardroom. But I didn't say that. I just stared out the window at the passing suburbs, letting her dig her own grave with every word. He is sending another $10,000 for the house renovations. She continued, her voice taking on that greedy edge she couldn't quite hide. He wants us to redo the master bath in imported Italian marble. He says only the best for us. I gripped the door handle. My son wasn't sending money. He was begging for help on a crumpled piece of paper inside my jacket. The money she was spending, the marble, the car, this life, it wasn't coming from a salary. It was coming from somewhere else, and the thought of where it actually came from made my stomach turn. We pulled into the driveway of the house that used to be mine. It stood grand and imposing a monument to the success I thought I had passed down to my son. Now it looked like a fortress of lies. As the engine cut out, silence filled the car for a moment. Beatrice turned to me, her eyes dropping once again to my chest, right where the package made the slightest bulge in the wool fabric. "You know, Dad," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously solicitous. "That coat really is filthy. That man at the market got grease all over the sleeve. Why don't you give it to me right now? I can drop it at the cleaners on my way to the salon." My heart hammered against the package. She knew. Or at least she suspected. Beatrice didn't do laundry. She didn't run errands for me unless there was something in it for her. She wanted the coat because she wanted to see what I was hiding. "It is fine, Beatrice," I said, opening the car door and stepping out into the cool air. "It is just a smudge. I can brush it off." She was out of the car in a flash, rounding the hood to block my path to the front door. She stood on the walkway, her hand extended, her nails perfectly manicured and sharp as talons. "Do not be silly, Harrison," she insisted, stepping closer. "You cannot wear dirty clothes in the house. It is disrespectful to the new furniture Nash bought us. Give me the coat." I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, I didn't see my daughter-in-law. I saw an adversary, a suspect, and I knew that if I handed over this coat, I would be handing over my son's life. I stepped around her, moving faster than an old man should. "I really need the restroom, Beatrice," I muttered, pushing past her toward the front door. "We can worry about the coat later." I heard her heels clicking rapidly on the pavement behind me. She was pursuing me. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking not from age but from adrenaline. I managed to unlock the door and push inside just as she reached the threshold. The house was cool and smelled of expensive lilies. I headed straight for the stairs, but Beatrice was younger and faster. She cut through the living room and met me at the base of the staircase. "Dad, stop," she commanded. The sweetness was gone now. Her voice was hard, brittle. "You are acting strange. What did that man give you?" I froze. She wasn't playing games anymore. She had seen the exchange. "He gave me nothing," I lied, looking her dead in the eye. "He was just a confused vagrant. He bumped into me." "Then why won't you take off your coat?" she challenged, crossing her arms. "It is 70 degrees in here. You are sweating. Take it off." I needed a distraction. I needed chaos. My eyes darted to the kitchen island to my right. There was a fresh pot of coffee sitting on the warmer brewed by the automatic timer. Beside it was a delicate porcelain cup and saucer that Beatrice must have set out for herself. "My throat is parched," I rasped, feigning a coughing fit. I hacked loudly, bending over, clutching my chest with one hand while keeping the other firmly on the package. "I need water. Or coffee. Anything." Beatrice sighed, the sound of pure exasperation. "Fine. Get some water. Then give me the coat." I shuffled to the kitchen island. I reached for the coffee pot. My hand trembled this time, intentionally exaggerating the tremor. I poured the dark, steaming liquid into the cup, filling it to the brim, then over the brim. It spilled onto the saucer. "Careful," Beatrice snapped, stepping forward. "You are making a mess." That was exactly what I wanted. As she reached out to snatch the pot from my hand, I pivoted. I pretended to lose my grip on the cup. I flailed, sending the entire cup of scalding coffee flying. It didn't hit the floor. It hit me. I splashed the hot liquid all down the front of my shirt and, crucially, all over the lapel of the coat. Ideally, I would have avoided burning myself, but pain was a small price to pay for evidence. I cried out, a genuine yelp of shock, as the heat seared my skin through the fabric. "Oh my God," I yelled, stumbling back. "It burns!" "Beatrice, it burns!" Beatrice shrieked, jumping back to avoid the splash. "You clumsy old fool, look at the floor, look at the rug. I am sorry. I am so sorry." I wailed, clutching the sodden, steaming fabric away from my skin. I need to get this off. I need cold water. Here, take it off, she yelled, reaching for the coat again. Give it to me, no. I shouted, backing away, my eyes wide with feigned panic. I need to get in the shower. The skin is burning. I need cold water now. I didn't wait for her permission. I turned and ran for the stairs. The pain was real, a sharp, biting heat on my chest, but the clarity it gave me was sharper. I took the steps 2 at a time, ignoring the ache in my knees. Harrison Beatrice screamed from the kitchen. Stop! I didn't stop! I reached the landing and sprinted down the hall to my bedroom. I slammed the door shut and locked it. Then I ran into the ensuite bathroom and locked that door too. My hands were shaking violently as I peeled off the soaking wet coat. My chest was red and angry, but I didn't care. I threw the coat into the empty bathtub and reached into the inner pocket. The package was dry. The thick brown paper had protected it. I sank onto the cold tile floor, clutching the box against my chest, listening to the sound of Beatrice pounding on the bedroom door downstairs. Open this door, Harrison, she screamed, her voice muffled but filled with rage. Open it right now, or I am calling the doctor. You are not well. I looked at the package in my hands. I wasn't unwell. For the first time in 2 years, I was completely awake, and I was going to find out exactly what she had done to my son. The lock on the bathroom door clicked into place with a heavy metallic thud that echoed in the small tiled room. I did not stop there. I engaged the secondary deadbolt and leaned my back against the cold wood, sliding down until I hit the floor. My chest was throbbing. The scalding coffee had soaked through my shirt and was currently blistering my skin, but the physical pain was distant, like a radio playing in another room. My entire universe had narrowed down to the brown paper package clutched in my trembling hands. Outside the door, the pounding started again. Beatrice was not just knocking. She was hammering on the wood with the flat of her hand, a rhythmic, frantic beat that betrayed her desperation. Harrison, opened this door immediately. Her voice was shrill, muffled by the solid oak, but clear enough to hear the panic underneath the anger. You are hurt. You need burn cream. I am calling the paramedics if you do not answer me right now. Do not be a stubborn old fool. I closed my eyes and took a deep, ragged breath. I am fine. Beatrice, I shouted back, forcing my voice to sound frail and shaken. The voice of a confused senior citizen who had just had a clumsy accident. I just need a moment. I am taking a cold shower. Please just give me a minute of privacy. I heard her huff of frustration, the click of her heels pacing on the hardwood of the bedroom floor. She was not leaving. She was patrolling. She was a shark circling a life raft, waiting for a slip-up. I turned on the shower, cranking the handle until the water roared against the porcelain tub. The noise created a sonic shield, a white noise curtain that would buy me the silence I needed. With shaking fingers, I placed the package on the bath mat. I pulled the small grooming scissors from the vanity drawer. My hands, usually steady, were vibrating with adrenaline. I sliced through the thick packing tape. It gave way with a harsh ripping sound that was fortunately swallowed by the noise of the rushing water. I peeled back the brown paper. Inside was a plain, unmarked cardboard box. I lifted the lid. The first thing I saw was the glint of gold. My breath hitched in my throat. It was a watch. But it wasn't just any watch. It was the Patek Philippe Calatrava I had given Nash the day he graduated with his master's degree in architecture. I remembered that day vividly. The way the sun hit the campus lawn, the pride in his eyes, the way he had strapped it on and promised me with the solemnity of a young man starting his life that it would be his compass. He said he would never take it off because it reminded him of the time and effort it took to build something lasting. I reached in and picked it up. The weight of it was familiar, but everything else was wrong. The sapphire crystal face, designed to be scratch-resistant, was shattered. A spiderweb of cracks obscured the dial. But that wasn't what made my stomach turn over. It was the band. The leather strap, once a pristine alligator brown, was stiff and dark. I brought it closer to my face, the metallic scent of copper hitting my nose before I even focused my eyes. It was blood. Dried, dark, rusted blood encrusted in the crevices of the gold casing and soaking the leather. I dropped the watch onto the mat as if it were burning hot. My son's watch. Blood. The implication was a physical blow to my gut. I looked back into the box. Next to where the watch had lain was a blister pack of medication. I picked it up, squinting at the foil backing. Haloperidol, 5 milligrams. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. In my years investigating healthcare fraud for the Bureau, I had seen this drug used countless times. It was an antipsychotic, a chemical restraint used to sedate violent patients in psychiatric wards or to keep the elderly compliant in nursing homes. It turned people into zombies. It stripped away their will. Why did my son have this? Nash didn't have a history of mental illness. He was the most lucid, grounded person I knew. I turned the blister pack over. There was a pharmacy label stuck to the back, partially peeled off, but still legible. Sunny Meadows Care Home. I read the address below the name. It wasn't a London postcode. It wasn't a sleek European clinic. It was an address in Illinois. A rural route less than 20 miles from where I was currently sitting. My son wasn't in a penthouse overlooking the Thames. He wasn't leading a team of architects in a glass skyscraper. He was 20 miles away, heavily sedated, in a facility I had never heard of. The lie Beatrice had constructed was so massive, so audacious, it was almost impressive in its cruelty. There was one last item in the bottom of the box, a scrap of paper torn from the margin of a magazine or a flyer. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was jagged, erratic, the letters sloping backward. Nash was right-handed. His penmanship was usually architectural, precise, and blocky. This scrawl looked like it had been carved by a claw or by a left hand forced to write because the right hand was broken. SOS, trap, dad, 3 words. 3 words that dismantled my reality. The letters were pressed so hard into the paper the pen had nearly torn through. This wasn't a message sent days ago. It felt immediate, urgent. A message in a bottle thrown into a violent sea. I sat there on the cold tiles surrounded by the debris of the truth. The broken watch, the drugs, the note. The noise of the shower thundered in the background, but inside my head, there was a deafening silence. The grief I expected to feel didn't come. Instead, a cold, hard clarity began to crystallize in my chest, replacing the burning pain of the coffee scald. I stood up slowly. I walked to the mirror above the sink. I looked at the man reflected there. For the last 3 years, I had been Harrison the retiree, Harrison the widower, Harrison the gentle grandfather figure who gardened and read spy novels and let his daughter-in-law manage the details because he was too tired to fight. I saw the gray hair, the lines etched around the eyes, the slightly stooped shoulders of a man who had accepted his twilight years. But as I stared into my own pupils, I saw something shift. It was a subtle change, a tightening of the jaw, a sharpening of the focus. The fog of grief and age evaporated. I was looking at Harrison Stone, the man who had once uncovered a $50 million Ponzi scheme buried in shell companies in the Cayman Islands. I was looking at the man who could track a single dollar through a hurricane of wire transfers. Beatrice thought she was dealing with a senile old man. She thought she had subdued me with comfortable lies and fake smiles. She had made a fatal calculation error. She had poked the bear. I turned away from the mirror. I had work to do. I couldn't leave these things here. Beatrice would search this room the moment I left. She would tear it apart looking for whatever the delivery man had given me. I needed a hiding spot that a housewife, no matter how devious, wouldn't think to check. I looked up. The ventilation grate above the toilet. It was painted over with layers of white latex, looking like it hadn't been opened in decades. Perfect. I stepped up onto the closed toilet lid. I used the tip of the grooming scissors to scrape away the paint from the screw heads. It took effort, and my shoulder screamed in protest, but I worked with methodical precision. 1 screw, 2 screws. The grate came loose with a dusty creak. I carefully placed the watch, the blister pack, and the note inside the dark, dusty ductwork, pushing them back far enough that they couldn't be seen from below. I memorized the angle. Then I replaced the grate. I used the handle of the scissors to screw it back into place, then took a bar of white soap and rubbed it over the screw heads, filling in the fresh metal scratches to mimic the old paint. It wasn't perfect, but it would pass a casual inspection. I tore the cardboard box into tiny pieces. I shredded the brown paper wrapping until it was confetti. I turned off the shower and threw the sodden pieces into the toilet, flushing them in 3 separate batches, watching the evidence swirl away into the dark. I stripped off my coffee-stained shirt and threw it in the hamper. I splashed cold water on my burned chest. The skin was angry and red, blistering in places, but the pain was good. It was grounding. It was fuel. I put on a fresh shirt, buttoning it all the way to the top to hide the injury. I checked the mirror one last time. I relaxed my jaw. I softened my eyes. I slumped my shoulders forward just an inch. The forensic accountant vanished. The confused old man returned. I unlocked the bathroom door. Then I unlocked the bedroom door. Beatrice was standing right there on the landing, her fist raised to knock again. She looked frantic, her composure fraying at the edges. "Dad," she exclaimed, lowering her hand. "What took you so long?" I was about to break the door down. I offered her a weak, apologetic smile. "I am sorry, dear," I said, my voice trembling just the right amount. I was just embarrassed. I made such a mess of myself. "Old age is not dignified, is it?" She scanned me, her eyes darting to my hands, my pockets looking for the package. She saw nothing. She sniffed the air, smelling the soap and the lingering steam. She seemed to deflate slightly, her suspicion warring with the visual evidence of a frail old man. "Well," she said, smoothing her dress, regaining her icy control. "As long as you are all right. Come downstairs." I made tea. "And Dad," "Yes, Beatrice. We need to talk about your finances." Nash sent an email. "There are some papers you need to sign." I looked at her, at the monster hiding behind the face of a beauty queen. "Of course, Beatrice," I said. "Anything for Nash." I followed her down the stairs, staring at the back of her neck, plotting the exact coordinates of her destruction. The dining room was a mausoleum of expensive taste. Beatrice sat at the head of the long mahogany table beneath a crystal chandelier that cost more than my first year of college tuition. She was cutting a piece of roast chicken with surgical precision. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the scrape of silver against china and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I took my seat to her right. My chest was still throbbing from the burn, but the pain helped me focus. It kept me grounded in the present moment, reminding me that I was no longer a guest in my own home. I was an undercover operative in enemy territory. I picked up my fork, letting my hand tremble slightly. I needed to sell the performance. I needed her to see a frail, sentimental old man, not the hunter who had just hidden evidence in the ventilation shaft. Beatrice did not look up. She took a sip of red wine, her eyes fixed on her phone screen, which was propped up against the centerpiece. She was likely checking her bank balance or browsing for more things to buy with my son's stolen money. The dinner was delicious, which somehow made it worse. She was playing the role of the perfect housewife while keeping her husband in a cage. I took a bite of the chicken and chewed slowly, forcing the food past the lump in my throat. It was time to cast the line. I cleared my throat, a dry, raspy sound that made her glance up with a flicker of annoyance. "You know, Beatrice," I started, keeping my voice soft and wistful. "That fall at the market today really shook me up. It made me realize something." She lowered her fork, her expression guarded. What is that, Harrison? I am not going to be around forever. I looked down at my plate, pushing a potato around with my fork. I have been thinking about my estate, about Nash. I miss him terribly. It has been 2 years since I saw his face, and today, well, it just made me want to settle things, to make sure he is taken care of. Beatrice's posture straightened instantly. The annoyance vanished, replaced by a predator's alertness. What do you mean, settle things? I sighed, leaning back in my chair. The beach house in Florida. The one in Sarasota. I have been holding on to it, thinking I might retire there, but who am I kidding? I am too old to manage a property like that. It is just sitting there gathering dust. I checked the market value last week. It is worth over $500,000 now. I let the number hang in the air between us. $500,000. I saw the reaction immediately. It was subtle, but to a trained eye it was as loud as a gunshot. Her pupils dilated. The corner of her mouth twitched. She set her wine glass down, forgetting to check her phone. $500,000 was a lot of renovations, a lot of designer bags, a lot of freedom. I think I continued, keeping my eyes misty and unfocused. I think I want to transfer the deed to Nash, right now, as a birthday gift. I know his birthday isn't for another month, but why wait? I want him to have it. I want him to know his father loves him. Beatrice leaned forward. Her voice transformed, becoming silky and warm, the voice of a snake charming a mouse. Oh, Dad, that is incredibly generous. Nash would be so touched. He loves that house. He was just talking about it the other day in his email. Lies. Nash hadn't been to that house in 5 years, but I nodded along. I have the deed in my safe deposit box, I said. I can go to the lawyer on Monday. I just need Nash to sign the transfer papers. I suppose I can mail them to London, but the international post is so slow and unreliable these days. Beatrice smiled, a wide, predatory grin that showed too many teeth. Oh, there is no need for that, Dad. You do not need to bother Nash with paperwork while he is so busy running the European division. You know how stressed he is. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was cold. He signed a power of attorney before he left, she said, her eyes shining with greed. A full, durable power of attorney. He gave me legal authority to sign for him on all financial and property matters. It was just in case of emergencies, but we can use it for this. You can just transfer the deed to me, acting on his behalf. It will be much faster. It stays in the family. I will keep it safe for him. There it was. The smoking gun. Power of attorney. That was how she had been draining his accounts. That was how she had mortgaged this house. That was how she had erased him from the legal system without raising a single red flag. She had the legal right to become him. I looked at her hand on mine. I wanted to pull away. I wanted to tell her I knew she was a thief and a liar. Instead, I turned my hand over and patted hers gently. Is that so? I said, sounding relieved. Well, that certainly simplifies things. You are such a good wife, Beatrice. Always thinking ahead. She squeezed my hand, victory radiating off her. I try, Dad. I just want to help. So shall we call your lawyer on Monday morning? We can get this done first thing. I nodded, pretending to mull it over. Yes. Monday sounds perfect. I smiled at her, a weak, compliant smile. But Beatrice, there is just one thing. Anything, Harrison. What is it? I just need to see him. The air in the room changed instantly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Beatrice froze. See him, she repeated, her voice flat. Yes, I said, looking up with wide, hopeful eyes. It is a big gift, Beatrice. $500,000. I just want to tell him myself. I want to see his face when I tell him. I know he is busy, but surely he has 5 minutes for his old dad. We can do a video call. FaceTime, Zoom, whatever they use over there. Just 5 minutes. Then I will sign whatever you want." Beatrice pulled her hand away from mine as if I had burned her. She sat back in her chair, her spine rigid. The warmth evaporated, replaced by a sharp, defensive edge. "Harrison, we talked about this. He is working. The time difference is terrible. It is the middle of the night in London." I glanced at the grandfather clock. It was 7 in the evening here. That made it 1 in the morning in London. "I can wait up," and I pleaded, pushing a little harder. "Or we can do it tomorrow morning." "Sunday. Surely he isn't working on Sunday." "Just a quick hello, Beatrice. I haven't seen his face in 2 years. Just photos. I need to see my son." Beatrice stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. She walked to the window and turned her back to me, her arms crossed tight across her chest. I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was cornered. She couldn't produce him because he wasn't in London. He was 20 miles away in a drugged stupor. If she put him on a screen, the game was over. The background wouldn't be a London flat. He wouldn't look like a successful executive. He would look like a prisoner. "Dad, stop pushing," she snapped, not turning around. "You are being difficult." "I am not being difficult." "Beatrice," I said, letting a tiny bit of steel bleed into my voice, just enough to test her. "I am offering a $500,000 gift. All I am asking for is a video call. If he is really doing so well, why is that a problem? Why can I never see him?" She spun around. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide with a manic intensity. It wasn't just anger, it was terror. She slammed her hand down on the table, making the silverware jump. "Because he cannot," she screamed. "Do you think this is a game, Harrison? Do you think he is just playing architect over there?" She was improvising now, grasping at straws, her lies spiraling out of control. "He is not just building office parks," she yelled, pacing the room. "He was recruited for a top-secret government infrastructure project. It is Ministry of Defense work, classified. Do you understand what that means?" I stared at her, blinking in feigned confusion. "Ministry of Defense. My son is an architect, Beatrice. He designs libraries. He designs secure facilities. Now," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "High security, they have strict protocols, no video calls, no digital footprint. If he gets on FaceTime with you, he could lose his clearance, he could go to jail." "Harrison, do you want your son to go to prison because you are too needy to wait for an email?" It was absurd. It was the kind of lie a child tells when they are caught with their hand in the cookie jar, escalating the stakes to impossible heights to shut down the questioning. My son, the man who got motion sickness on escalators, was not building secret bunkers for the British government. But the ferocity of her lie told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't protecting his job. She was protecting her secret. I looked at her trembling in her designer dress, her chest heaving with the effort of her deception. She was terrified. She knew that one look at Nash would destroy her. I lowered my head, staring at the tablecloth. I let my shoulders slump in defeat. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't know it was dangerous." "It is dangerous," she hissed, seizing the advantage. "It is incredibly dangerous. And you putting pressure on him, putting pressure on me, it puts us all at risk. You have to trust me, Harrison. I am protecting him." I nodded slowly. "You are right." "I am sorry, Beatrice. I am just an old man missing his boy. I don't want to cause trouble." She exhaled a long, shaky breath. She smoothed her hair, composing herself, putting the mask back on. "Good," she said, her voice returning to a calm, icy command. "I am glad we understand each other. Now we will go to the lawyer on Monday and handle the deed transfer. It is the best way to keep his assets safe while he is undercover." "Yes," I said. "Monday." She picked up her wine glass and downed the rest of the contents in one gulp. "I am going to bed," she announced. This conversation has given me a migraine. Leave the dishes. The maid will get them tomorrow. She walked out of the room without looking back. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, then the slam of her bedroom door. I sat alone in the vast, cold dining room. I looked at the empty chair where my son should have been sitting. Beatrice thought she had won. She thought she had bullied me into submission with her ridiculous story about secret government projects. She thought she was getting a house in Florida on Monday. She was wrong. She wasn't getting a house. She was getting a war. I stood up and cleared the table myself, moving quietly and efficiently. I washed the plates and dried them. I needed to keep my hands busy while my mind worked. She had the power of attorney. That was the key. She had the legal right to act as Nash. As long as that document was valid, and as long as Nash was incapacitated, she held all the cards. I needed to break that chain. I needed proof that she was abusing her power. I needed to follow the money. I went to the hallway and retrieved my laptop from my satchel. Beatrice monitored the house Wi-Fi, I was sure of it. But I had a personal hotspot she didn't know about, a holdover from my consulting days. I carried the computer into the library, a room Beatrice rarely entered because it smelled of old paper and possessed no mirrors. I sat in the dark, the glow of the screen illuminating my face. I cracked my knuckles. It was time to stop being Harrison the father and start being Harrison the investigator. I opened a browser window and navigated to the bank's portal. I knew Nash's username. I knew his old password. I prayed he hadn't changed it, or rather that Beatrice hadn't changed it. I typed it in. Access denied. I tried a variation he used for his email. Access denied. I closed my eyes and thought. Beatrice. She was arrogant. She was narcissistic. People like that rarely chose random passwords. They chose things that validated them. I typed in the date of their wedding. Access granted. The dashboard loaded. I stared at the numbers, and the cold anger in my gut turned into a freezing rage. It wasn't just theft. It was an annihilation. The library was quiet save for the hum of the hard drive and the rhythmic tapping of my fingers on the keyboard. The screen glowed in the darkness, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny ghosts. I had not felt this specific kind of focus in years. It was the hunter's trance. The world outside the monitor ceased to exist. There was no house, no Beatrice sleeping upstairs, no physical pain in my chest. There was only data, and data never lied. I was logged into the joint checking account Nash and Beatrice shared. I had set this account up with Nash 15 years ago before he even met her. My name was technically still on the original charter, though I had removed myself as a signatory years back. However, the bank's legacy system still recognized my old admin credentials, which I had never deactivated. It was a security flaw I would have flagged in a professional audit, but tonight it was my lifeline. I did not just look at the transaction history. That is what amateurs do. I downloaded the raw CSV files for the last 24 months. I opened them in a spreadsheet program that I kept on this old laptop for consulting work I occasionally dabbled in. I needed to see the skeleton of their life. I needed to see the bones. The first thing I looked for was the income. Beatrice claimed Nash was a regional director. That position, in a firm of his size, commanded a base salary of at least $250,000 a year, not including bonuses. I filtered the spreadsheet for incoming wire transfers. I filtered for direct deposits. I filtered for international currency exchanges. The result was a blank white screen. 0. There was not a single deposit from his firm. Not £1 sterling converted to dollars. Not one expense reimbursement. For 24 months, the income column from employment was a flat line. My son was not working in London. He was not working anywhere. So where was the money coming from? Beatrice drove a car worth 6 figures. She wore clothes that cost more than my first house. The renovation contractors were practically living in the driveway. I cleared the filters and looked at the deposits again, sorting by amount. My breath caught in my throat. The money was coming in lumps. Big, irregular, bleeding lumps. I saw a deposit for $50,000 from a company called Freedom Mortgage. I traced the reference number. It was a home equity line of credit. A second mortgage. She had leveraged the equity in this house. The house I had paid for. The house that was supposed to be Nash's nest egg. She had borrowed against 90% of its value. She was stripping the walls of value while painting them with expensive colors. But that wasn't enough to sustain her spending. I kept scrolling. I saw transfers from Fidelity Investments, $10,000 here, $15,000 there, regular monthly withdrawals. I felt sick. That was Nash's 401k. That was his retirement. He had been contributing the maximum amount since he was 22. He was proud of that fund. He used to show me the quarterly growth. Beatrice was liquidating it. She was taking the early withdrawal penalties, the tax hits, the loss of compound interest. She was burning his future to keep herself warm in the present. It was financial suicide. It was the behavior of a parasite that does not care if the host dies as long as it gets fed today. I switched to the expenses tab. This was the autopsy. I watched the money flow out. It was a river of narcissism. Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, the Ritz-Carlton Spa, a jewelry store in the Loop. Thousands of dollars a month on things that vanished. Dinners, wines, clothes. It was repulsive, but it was not criminal. Being a gold digger was not a felony. I needed something else. I needed the link to the package. I needed the connection to the man in the farmer's market. I filtered the expenses for recurring monthly payments. I ignored the utilities and the car lease. I looked for something consistent, something that looked like a bill but did not belong. There it was. On the 3rd of every month, like clockwork, a transfer of $3,000 exactly. The recipient was listed simply as SM Services LLC, SM Sunny Meadows. I cross-referenced the bank routing number for the recipient. It was a local community bank in Woodstock, Illinois, the same town where the Sunny Meadows facility was located. $3,000 a month. I sat back in my leather chair and did the mental math. $3,000 was too low for a luxury rehabilitation center. A place like that would cost $10,000 or $15,000 a month. $3,000 was the basement rate. It was the price of a state-supplemented warehouse for the indigent and the forgotten. It was the price you paid to store a human being you wanted to forget. She wasn't paying for his treatment. She was paying for his storage, and she was paying for it with his own money. The cruelty of it made my vision blur. Nash was sitting in a room 20 miles away, rotting in his own filth, likely sedated out of his mind, while his wife used his retirement savings to pay the rent on his cell. She had turned him into a battery, a source of energy she was slowly draining until there was nothing left. I looked closer at the transaction details. The payments to SM Services were classified under miscellaneous medical, but there were other payments to the same routing number, smaller ones. $500 here, $200 there. They were tagged as cash withdrawals at an ATM in Woodstock. I checked the dates. Every time there was an ATM withdrawal in Woodstock, there was a corresponding charge at a liquor store or a motel in the same area. Beatrice wasn't just paying the facility, she was visiting. But not to see Nash. She was staying in motels. She was buying liquor. She was meeting someone. Was it the man from the market? No. That man had been terrified. He had wanted to help. The person Beatrice was meeting was an accomplice, or a lover, or both. I hit print. The sound of the laser printer whirring to life in the corner of the room sounded like a jet engine in the silence of the house. I froze, staring at the ceiling, praying Beatrice was in a deep sleep or too drunk on wine to hear. The paper fed through with a rhythmic shushing sound. 1 page. 2 pages. evidence, proof. I snatched the pages from the tray before the printer could even finish its cooling cycle. The paper was warm in my hands. I scanned the lines again just to be sure. The theft, the deception, the imprisonment. It was all there in black and white numbers. My hand shook so hard the paper rattled. This was my son, my boy who I had taught to ride a bike, who I had sent to college, who I had trusted to marry a good woman. I had failed him. I had let this viper into our home, and she had consumed him whole. I folded the papers and shoved them into the inside pocket of my cardigan. I could not leave them here. I could not leave them anywhere in this house. This house was compromised. I needed to get out. I needed to breathe air that wasn't recycled through Beatrice's lies. But I couldn't leave yet. It was 2 a.m. If I tried to leave now, the alarm would chime. She would wake up. She would know. I had to wait until morning. I had to play the game for a few more hours. I shut down the laptop and wiped the browser history, even though I was using an incognito window. I cleaned the keyboard with my handkerchief, wiping away any oils or fingerprints. I put the laptop back in my satchel exactly as it had been. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark lawn. The moon was casting long shadows across the grass. Somewhere out there in the dark, Nash was waiting. He had sent a message in a bottle, and I had received it. I touched the pocket where the bank statements rested against my heart. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was the retribution. And tomorrow morning I was going to the bank. Beatrice thought she held all the cards because she had a piece of paper that said she was Nash. She was about to find out that a power of attorney was nothing compared to the power of a father who had nothing left to lose. I walked out of the library and climbed the stairs in the dark, moving like a ghost in the house I had paid for, towards the room where my enemy slept. The morning sun glinted off the glass facade of the First National Bank of Evanston, but it brought no warmth to my bones. I walked through the revolving doors, clutching my satchel tight against my side. Inside, the air was conditioned to a sterile chill and smelled of stale coffee and money. I walked straight past the tellers who were busy counting out cash for people who still believed their lives were their own. I did not want a teller. I wanted the branch manager. I knew her name. Sylvia Gable. She had been the manager here for 10 years. She had handled the mortgage on my house when I bought it. She had handled the transfer of the deed to Nash. She knew me, or at least she knew the man I used to be. I walked to the glass-walled office at the back of the lobby. Sylvia was sitting behind her desk, typing on a keyboard with long manicured nails that reminded me uncomfortably of Beatrice. She looked up as I approached, and her professional smile faltered for a fraction of a second before reassembling itself. "Harrison," she said, but she did not stand up. "What a surprise. I did not see you on the appointment log. I need to speak with you, Sylvia. It is urgent. It is about Nash." She sighed a short, sharp sound of impatience and gestured to the chair opposite her. I sat down. I did not waste time with pleasantries. I pulled the printouts from my satchel, the ones I had stolen from the printer in the dead of night. I slid them across the polished mahogany desk. "There is unauthorized activity on Nash's account," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Massive withdrawals, liquidation of retirement assets, transfers to shell companies. Someone is draining him dry, Sylvia. I need you to freeze the accounts immediately pending a fraud investigation." Sylvia did not even look at the papers. She just stared at me with a look of pity that made my skin crawl. She pushed the papers back toward me with the tip of her pen as if they were contaminated. "Harrison, we have been through this," she said, her voice taking on that slow, enunciated tone people use with children or the mentally decline. "Beatrice handles the finances now. You know that. Beatrice is stealing from him. I snapped, letting a flash of the old prosecutor show. Look at the numbers, Sylvia. $50,000 in home equity. Monthly cash withdrawals in Woodstock. This is not household management. This is embezzlement. Sylvia leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Beatrice has a durable power of attorney, Harrison. A legal document signed by Nash himself in this very office 2 years ago. It grants her full, unchecked authority over all his assets. As far as the bank is concerned, she is Nash. She can burn the money in the parking lot if she wants to. It is legal. It is not legal if she is acting against his interests. I argued, my hands gripping the arms of the chair. It is a fiduciary breach. You have a duty to report suspicious activity. I am reporting it right now. Sylvia laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Suspicious activity. Harrison, she is his wife. She is renovating their home. She is managing his affairs while he is overseas working for the government. Beatrice told me all about it. She told me how hard it is on her handling everything alone while you struggle with your transition into retirement. The way she said transition made it sound like a disease. I realized then, with a sinking feeling, that Beatrice had been here before me. She had poisoned the well. She had painted a picture of a senile, meddling father-in-law long before I ever walked through these doors. Sylvia leaned forward, her face hardening. Look, Harrison. Beatrice warned me you might get confused. She said you have been having episodes. Paranoia. Forgetfulness. She asked me to call her if you came in trying to cause trouble. Trouble. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. I am trying to save my son's life. You are enabling a predator, Sylvia. When the FBI gets involved in this, and they will get involved, you are going to want to be on the right side of the subpoena. Sylvia's face went blank. She reached for the phone on her desk. I think you should leave, Harrison. Right now, before I call security. You are disturbing the other customers. I looked around. People were staring. The teller had stopped counting. The security guard, a heavy-set man with a bored expression, was already taking a step toward the office. I was trapped. If I made a scene, I would just prove Beatrice right. I would be the crazy old man ranting at the bank manager. I would give them the ammunition they needed to put me away. I snatched the papers off the desk and shoved them back into my bag. You are making a mistake, Sylvia, I said quietly. A very expensive mistake. I turned and walked out. I kept my head high, but inside I was shaking. The system was rigged. The law was a blunt instrument, and Beatrice held the handle. I pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The heat of the morning hit me, but I felt cold. I had played my hand too early. I had underestimated her network. I had barely taken 10 steps toward my car when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a jarring, angry vibration. I pulled it out. The screen flashed a picture of a smiling Beatrice, a photo taken years ago at a Christmas party. I stared at it for a moment, considering letting it ring. But I knew ignoring her would only escalate things. I swiped right and held the phone to my ear. I said nothing. What were you doing at the bank, Harrison? Her voice was not the sweet saccharine tone she used at dinner. It was not even the defensive tone she used in the car. It was a hiss, a sound of pure venom. It was the voice of the warden catching a prisoner trying to dig a tunnel. I was just checking on... I started trying to sound confused, trying to salvage the old man act. Cut the crap, she interrupted. Sylvia called me. She said you were waving papers around talking about fraud, talking about the FBI. Who do you think you are? I am Nash's father, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and fear. I am worried about him, Beatrice. The money is none of your business. She screamed so loud the speaker distorted. It is my money. It is our money. You gave up your right to worry when you retired and became a burden. I stopped walking. I stood on the corner of the busy street, people flowing around me like water around a stone. A burden. Is that what I was? I am not a burden, I said, trying to keep my dignity. I paid for that house, Beatrice. I paid for everything. And now you are done paying, she said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm whisper. Listen to me very closely, Harrison. You are walking on thin ice. I tolerate you because it looks good for the neighbors. I tolerate you because Nash would have wanted me to take care of his poor senile father. But my patience has a limit, and you just found it. Beatrice, please, I said, feigning weakness. I just want to know he is okay. He is fine, she snapped. He is better than you are. But if you ever go to that bank again, if you ever try to access those accounts, or talk to Sylvia, or interfere in my business, I will take action. What kind of action? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. You know that heart medication you take, Harrison? The beta blockers, the blood thinners. It would be a shame if the pharmacy had a mix-up. It would be a shame if the insurance stopped covering them because of a clerical error. You are an old man with a bad heart. You need your medicine, and you need a roof over your head. I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. She was threatening my life. She was threatening to kill me slowly by withdrawing my care. And if that does not work, she continued, letting the silence stretch. I have power of attorney over you too, Harrison. Or I can get it. One call to Dr. Evans. One report about your paranoia, your outbursts at the bank, and I can have you declared incompetent. I can put you in a home, a nice state facility where you can stare at the wall all day and not bother anyone. The irony was sickening. She was threatening to put me in a home while my son was already rotting in one. She thought that was her trump card. She did not know that she had just confirmed everything. She was not protecting Nash. She was erasing us both. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to sound defeated, to sound broken. No, I whispered. Please, Beatrice. Not a home, I cannot go to a home. Then behave. She hissed, go back to your house, sit in your chair, read your books, and stay out of my finances. Do we understand each other? Yes, I said. Yes, Beatrice. I understand. Good. I will be home in an hour. Have tea ready. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking uncontrollably now, not from frailty, from fury. She had threatened to kill me. She had threatened to imprison me. She thought she had won. She thought she had cowed me into submission. She was wrong. She had just given me the motivation I needed to burn her world down. She thought the law was on her side because of a piece of paper. She forgot that I knew how to navigate the law better than she ever would. She forgot that I had friends who were not bank managers, friends who carried badges and warrants. But I couldn't call them yet. Not without Nash. If I moved now, she would hide him deeper, or worse, she would silence him permanently. I needed to get him out. I walked to my car, my stride lengthening, my back straightening. I was done with the bank. I was done with the polite approach. Beatrice wanted to play dirty. Fine. I checked my watch. It was 10 a.m. Sunny Meadows was an hour drive if I took the back roads. I wasn't going home to make tea. I was going to find my son, and God help anyone who stood in my way. I did not go home to make tea. I drove my sedan to the cash-only car rental lot on the south side of the city, a place where they did not ask for credit checks or insurance cards, and where the cars smelled of stale smoke and pine air fresheners. I parked my car 3 blocks away under a bridge and walked the rest of the distance. Beatrice tracked my phone. She tracked the GPS in my car. If I drove to Sunny Meadows in my own vehicle, she would know before I even parked. I turned off my phone and removed the SIM card, putting it in my pocket. For the next few hours, Harrison Stone did not exist digitally. I rented a rusted beige Ford Taurus with 200,000 miles on the odometer. It rattled when it idled and the suspension groaned over every pothole, but it was anonymous. I merged onto the interstate, heading north away from the manicured lawns of Evanston and into the rural sprawl that lay beyond the city limits. The drive took 2 hours. The scenery shifted from strip malls to cornfields to dense, neglected woodlands. The road narrowed until it was just a strip of cracked asphalt winding through trees that blocked out the sun. Sunny Meadows was a cruel joke of a name. There was no sun, and there were certainly no meadows. The facility sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, hidden from the main road by a wall of overgrown pines. It was a single-story brick building that looked more like a minimum security prison than a care home. The windows were small and barred. The paint on the trim was peeling away in long gray strips, revealing the rotting wood beneath. Weeds choked the flower beds near the entrance. I parked the Ford near a dumpster at the far end of the lot. I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. This was where my son lived. This was where my money went. $3,000 a month. Beatrice was paying for a dungeon. I stepped out of the car. The air hit me first. It did not smell like fresh country air. It smelled of industrial bleach, masking the underlying stench of boiled cabbage and old urine. It was the smell of institutional neglect. I walked to the front entrance. The automatic doors shuddered as they opened. The lobby was dim. The linoleum floor was scuffed and yellowed. A television mounted in the corner was playing a game show at high volume, but the color balance was off, making everyone on screen look green. Behind a high counter protected by plexiglass sat a woman in a stained pink scrub top. She was scrolling through her phone, chewing gum with an open mouth. She did not look up when I approached. "Excuse me," I said. She held up a finger without taking her eyes off the screen. "Hold on." I waited. My patience was thin, but I needed to get past her. After a minute, she finally dropped the phone onto the desk and looked at me with bored, glassy eyes. "Help you. I am looking for a patient," I said, keeping my voice polite. "A resident, I mean. His name is Nash Stone." She did not even type it into the computer. She just shook her head. "No one here by that name." "Please check," I insisted. "He would have been admitted about 2 years ago, maybe under a different intake date." She sighed and tapped a few keys with one finger. Stone. Stone. Nope. No Nash Stone. No Stone at all. Unless he is a new admit from the state hospital, we do not have him. I leaned in closer to the glass. "Are you sure? Maybe he is listed under a guardian's name." "Beatrice Stone." "Look, mister," she snapped. "I know who is in the beds. We have 42 beds. I know the names. We do not have a Nash Stone. Now, unless you are here for a delivery, you need to leave. Visiting hours are over for non-family." She was lying, or she was telling the truth as she knew it, which was worse. Beatrice was smart. She would not register him under his real name. That would create a paper trail. That would be searchable. I thanked her and walked away. I did not leave the building immediately. I walked down the hallway toward the restrooms, but as soon as I was out of her line of sight, I turned toward the exit sign at the end of the corridor. I pushed through the heavy fire door and found myself in a service alley behind the building. The smell here was worse. A row of large dumpsters stood overflowing with trash bags. The ground was slick with runoff. A man was heaving clear plastic bags filled with soiled linens into the open maw of a compactor. He wore a gray jumpsuit that was too big for him, and his back was to me, but I recognized the slump of his shoulders. "Leo." The man froze. He dropped the bag he was holding. He turned around slowly, his eyes wide with that same terror I had seen at the farmer's market. It was the delivery driver, the man who had given me the package. "Mr. Stone," he whispered, looking around frantically. "You should not be here. I told you not to come here. Beatrice has cameras. If she sees you—" I walked over to him, stepping over a puddle of questionable liquid. "You gave me my son's watch, Leo. You gave me a note begging for help. Did you think I was going to sit at home and do nothing?" Leo wiped his hands on his jumpsuit. He looked younger than I had thought, maybe in his late 30s, but his face was lined with stress. "I thought you would call the police," he hissed. "I thought you would bring a raid. Not come here alone. You cannot help him alone." "Where is he, Leo?" The woman at the front desk said, "There is no Nash Stone." Of course she did. Leo spat on the ground. "To her, he does not exist. To the state, he does not exist. Beatrice pays cash. She pays the administrator directly to keep him off the file. The official census. He is a ghost." "Then who is he?" I asked. "How do I find him?" "He is John Doe number 402. My blood ran cold. John Doe. The designation for a corpse or an unidentified victim. She had stripped him of his name. Leo stepped closer, his voice dropping to a rapid whisper. "I used to be a nurse here, an RN. I tried to report what they were doing to the patients 2 years ago. The neglect, the over-medication. The administrator fired me and blacklisted me. I could not get a job anywhere else. They let me come back as a janitor because they knew I needed the money, and they knew they could silence me. If I talk, I lose my paycheck. If I talk, they said they would frame me for stealing drugs." I put a hand on his shoulder. "I will protect you, Leo. I promise. But you have to tell me everything. Is he insane?" Beatrice said he had a breakdown. Leo shook his head violently. "No, he is not insane. He was in a car accident, Mr. Stone. 2 years ago. Beatrice was driving. She walked away without a scratch. Nash took a hit to the head. He had a subdural hematoma. He survived, but he had some motor function loss. He needed physical therapy. He needed speech therapy. He could have recovered. He could have been fun." I felt the world tilt on its axis. A car accident. Not a secret job. Not a promotion. A car crash. But Beatrice? Leo continued, his eyes filling with tears. Beatrice did not want a husband who needed care. She wanted the insurance money. She wanted the house. So she brought him here. She told the doctors he was violent. She told them he was a danger to himself. She paid them to keep him quiet. Quiet. I repeated the word, tasting bile. "They have him on a cocktail, Mr. Stone. Haloperidol, lorazepam, and something else. A paralytic. Succinylcholine in low doses. It keeps his muscles weak. He cannot walk. He cannot even hold a pen properly. That note, it took him 3 weeks to write that note. He had to hide the pen in his mattress. He had to wait until the drugs wore off slightly in the middle of the night. I felt a rage so pure it almost blinded me. They were chemically paralyzing my son. They were keeping him a prisoner in his own body. Take me to him, I said. Leo shook his head. I cannot. I do not have the keys to the secure wing. Only the head nurse and the administrator have them. And there is a guard, a big guy. He sits outside the hall. I do not care about the guard. Take me to the door. Leo looked at me. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw that I was not leaving. He nodded slowly. Okay. But we have to be fast. Shift change is in 10 minutes. The guard goes outside to smoke. That gives us a window. He led me to a metal door propped open with a brick. We slipped inside. The air was colder here. We were in the service corridor. We walked past the laundry room, past the kitchen where pots of gray-looking gruel were simmering on the stove. We reached a heavy double door with a keypad lock. "This is the north wing," Leo whispered. "This is where they keep the high-maintenance cases. The ones nobody visits. Room 402 is the third on the left." Through the small reinforced glass window in the door, I could see a hallway. It was empty. "The guard is gone," Leo said, checking his watch. "You have 5 minutes. The code is 4591. I punched in the code. The light turned green. The lock clicked. I pushed the door open and stepped into the forbidden zone. The silence here was different. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was the silence of people who had given up screaming. I walked to the third door on the left. There was no nameplate, just a plastic number screwed into the wood. 402. I opened the door. The room was dark, the blinds drawn tight against the day. It smelled of sickness and stale air. In the corner there was a bed with metal rails. A figure lay there motionless under a thin sheet. I stepped closer, my heart breaking with every beat. "Nash," I whispered. The figure stirred. A head turned slowly on the pillow. I gasped. My son was skeletal. His cheeks were sunken, his skin gray and papery. His hair, once thick and dark, was thinning and matted. But it was his eyes that killed me. They were open, but they were glassy, swimming in a chemical haze. He looked at me, but there was no recognition at first. Just a dull animal fear. "Nash. It is Dad. I am here." I reached out and touched his hand. It was cold and bony. At the sound of my voice, something sparked in the depths of his pupils. He blinked. He tried to lift his head, but it was too heavy. His lips moved dry and cracked. A sound came out, a low, guttural moan that formed into a word. "Dad." It wasn't a question. It was a prayer. I fell to my knees beside the bed, gripping his hand. "I am here, son. I found you. I promise you I am going to get you out of here." He tried to squeeze my hand, but his fingers were weak like wet clay. He moved his left hand, the one that wasn't paralyzed by the accident or the drugs dragging it across the sheet. He pointed to the window. I looked. Taped to the glass, blocking out the view of the parking lot, and the dumpster was a poster. It was a cheap travel poster of London. The Big Ben Tower, the red buses. Beatrice put it there. To mock him. To remind him of the lie she was telling the world while he rotted in the dark. Nash made a sound of distress. He looked at the door, then back at me. His eyes were wide, terrified. He fumbled for my hand again, turning my palm up. With his index finger, he traced letters on my skin, pressing hard with his nail. R-U-N, run. He was telling me to run. He wasn't worried about himself. He was worried that if Beatrice found me here, she would do the same to me. I looked at my broken son, and I shook my head. "No." I said, my voice fierce and low. "I am not running. I am going to burn this place to the ground, Nash, and Beatrice is going to be inside when it falls." Suddenly, the door behind me swung open. "Hey!" A deep voice boomed. "Who the hell are you?" I turned. The guard was back, and he was huge. The guard blocked the doorway, his massive frame casting a long shadow over Leo and me. His name tag read Davis, and his eyes were dull with the kind of boredom that easily turns into violence. My heart hammered against my ribs, but Leo stepped forward with a speed that surprised me. He did not fight. He did not run. He pulled a clipboard from a stack of linens on a nearby cart and shoved it toward the guard's chest. "State inspection. Davis." Leo said, his voice bored and irritated, perfectly mimicking the tone of a bureaucrat. "This is the auditor for the water safety compliance check. The pipes in the north wing are flagged again. Do you want to explain to the administrator why we are blocking a federal audit? Or do you want to go finish your smoke while we check the pressure valves in room 402? The guard blinked, looking from the clipboard to me. I stood tall, adjusting my collar, trying to look like a man who cared about water pressure and federal regulations. I gave him a curt nod of annoyance. "I am on a schedule," I barked, channeling my old FBI authority. "If I have to file a non-compliance report because of a door guard, this facility will be fined $10,000 by noon. Do you want that on your record?" Davis hesitated. He looked at the cigarette pack in his hand, then back at the heavy door. He did not get paid enough to care about water pipes. He grunted and stepped aside, waving his hand dismissively. "Just make it quick. I do not want the boss on my back." Leo nodded and pushed me into the room, closing the door softly behind us. The lock clicked, and the silence of the room swallowed us whole. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins, but it froze the moment I turned toward the bed. The room was suffocating. The air was thick with the smell of stale sweat and industrial disinfectant, but underneath it was the unmistakable metallic scent of decay. It was the smell of a life slowly stagnating. The only light came from the small window where the blinds were drawn, but through the cracks I could see the poster Beatrice had placed there. It was a large glossy print of the Houses of Parliament and the Elizabeth Tower taped directly onto the glass. It blocked the view of the parking lot and the dumpster. It was a window into a lie. A cruel joke meant to keep a drugged man confused about his reality. I stepped closer to the bed. The figure beneath the thin gray blanket barely made a mound. I reached out and pulled the cord for the small reading light above the headboard. The bulb flickered and hummed, casting a sickly yellow glow over the pillow. I had to grab the bed rail to keep from falling. This was not my son. This was a ghost. Nash had always been strong. He played rugby in college. He filled a room with his presence. The man in the bed was a skeleton wrapped in translucent skin. His cheekbones jutted out like razor blades. His eyes were sunken into dark purple hollows. His lips were cracked and dry, peeling in strips. He was lying perfectly still, his arms at his sides, his chest rising and falling in a shallow, chemically induced rhythm. "Nash," I choked out. The word felt inadequate. It felt like throwing a pebble into a canyon. He did not move. His eyes were open, staring fixedly at the Big Ben poster. They were glazed over, filmed with a milky haze of sedation. He was looking at London, but he was seeing nothing. I lowered the bed rail, the metal clanking softly. I reached out and took his hand. It was cold. So cold it felt like he was already gone. His fingers were thin, the nails long and yellowed. Beatrice had not just imprisoned him. She had neglected him. She had let him rot while she bought Italian marble and drove a Mercedes. "Nash," I said again, louder this time. "It is Dad. I am here." I squeezed his hand. I rubbed my thumb over his knuckles, trying to push some warmth back into his skin. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, his head turned. The movement was jerky, like a rusted machine forcing its gears to turn. His eyes left the poster and drifted toward my face. For a long time there was nothing, just the blank stare of the haloperidol. But then, as he focused on my features, something shifted. The haze seemed to ripple. His pupils contracted. A spark of recognition ignited in the depths of those dark eyes. It was followed immediately by a wave of pure, unadulterated agony. His mouth opened. His jaw worked, trying to form words, but his tongue was heavy and swollen. A sound escaped his throat, a dry, rattling croak that tore at my heart. Tears began to pool in his eyes, spilling over and tracking through the grime on his cheeks. He was crying silent, helpless tears. He tried to lift his right hand, but it just twitched on the sheet. The paralysis from the accident, or the drugs, kept it pinned. But his left hand, the one Leo said still worked, began to move. It dragged across the coarse fabric of the blanket, trembling with effort. He was reaching for me. I grabbed his left hand with both of mine. I pressed it to my cheek, letting him feel my stubble, my warmth, my tears. "I have you," I whispered. "I have you, son. You are safe. I know everything. I know about the accident. I know about Beatrice." At the mention of her name, Nash's eyes went wide. The fear that flooded his face was primal. He started to hyperventilate, his chest heaving under the thin sheet. He tried to pull his hand away, but not to retreat. He was trying to tell me something. He turned my hand over, palm up. He extended his index finger. His nail dug into my skin, sharp and desperate. He began to trace. R. He looked at me, checking to see if I understood. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. "You." He traced the curve deeply, scratching my skin. N. Run. He did not write help. He did not write save me. He wrote run. Even in this state, drugged, starved, and broken, his first instinct was to protect me. He knew what Beatrice was capable of. He knew that if she found me here, she would do to me what she had done to him. He was willing to rot in this bed to keep me safe. That realization broke me, and then it rebuilt me into something harder than I had ever been. I looked down at him, at the fear in his eyes, and I shook my head slowly. I brought his hand to my lips and kissed his knuckles. "No," I said, my voice low and vibrating with a deadly promise. "I am not running, Nash. Not this time." He made a distressed sound, trying to push me away, trying to save me. "Listen to me," I said, leaning in close, my face inches from his. "I am going to get you out of here. But I cannot do it today. I need a judge. I need the police. If I take you now, she will accuse me of kidnapping, and she will win. She will take you back and bury you deeper." He stared at me, the tears flowing faster. He understood. The intelligence behind his eyes was still there, trapped in a broken body. "I am going to burn her world down, Nash," I continued. "I am going to take everything from her. The money, the house, the freedom. She thinks she is the warden, but she is the prisoner. She just does not know it yet." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my handkerchief. I gently wiped his face, cleaning away the tears and the dirt. "You have to be strong for a little longer. Just a little longer. Can you do that for me?" He looked at me, and for a second the drugs seemed to recede. He gave a microscopic nod. He squeezed my hand back. It was a weak grip, but it was there. It was a pact. Leo knocked softly on the doorframe. "We have to go, Mr. Stone. The guard is coming back from his break." I stood up. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, leaving him in that bed. Leaving him in the dark with the fake London poster and the smell of despair. But I had to. To save him, I had to leave him. I leaned down and whispered in his ear, "I will come back for you. And when I do, I am bringing the cavalry." I let go of his hand. I walked to the door without looking back, because if I looked back, I would never leave. I stepped out into the hallway, my face a mask of cold determination. Beatrice had stolen 2 years of my son's life. I was going to make sure she paid for every single second with a year of her own. Leo locked the door behind us. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot. "Let's go," I said. "Take me to the lawyer." We walked down the hallway past the guard, who was now picking his teeth and ignoring us. He did not know that the old man walking past him was no longer a maintenance inspector. He was a man carrying a nuclear weapon of evidence, and the countdown had just begun. The office of Sarah Jenkins was not a place for the timid. It was located on the 42nd floor of a steel monolith in downtown Chicago, a fortress of glass and granite that looked down on the rest of the city with judgment. Sarah herself was much the same. She was a woman in her late 40s, with hair cut in a sharp bob that framed a face made of angles and intelligence. She did not offer me tea. She did not offer me sympathy. She offered me a seat and a silence that demanded facts. I sat opposite her desk, my clothes still smelling faintly of the institutional decay of Sunny Meadows. I felt like a soldier reporting from the front lines, covered in the mud of a war no one else knew was happening. I did not waste time with a preamble. I opened my satchel and began to lay out the evidence. The bank statements showing the embezzlement of millions. The mortgage documents proving the unauthorized leverage on the house. The photographs I had taken on my phone of the blister pack of haloperidol and the bloody watch. And finally the note. The jagged, desperate scrawl of a man trapped in a living nightmare. Sarah picked up the note. She held it by the corner, her eyes scanning the letters. She did not gasp. She did not cry. Her expression tightened, her lips pressing into a thin line. She set the note down and picked up the bank records. She traced the monthly payments to Sunny Meadows with a manicured finger. "This is systematic," she said, her voice cool and precise. "It is not just fraud, it is predation." She looked up at me. "You saw him. Today." I nodded. "I saw him, Sarah. He weighs maybe 130 pounds. He cannot speak clearly. They are keeping him paralyzed with drugs. He is rotting in a bed while she buys Italian marble." Sarah leaned back, steepling her fingers. "And you want to go back there with the police and kick the door down?" "I want to burn it down," I said, my hands clenching into fists. "I want to take him out of that hellhole tonight." "You can't," she said simply. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean I can't? He is being tortured." Sarah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling city. "Because right now, in the eyes of the law, Beatrice is not a monster. She is his wife. She holds a durable power of attorney, and likely a medical guardianship. If you walk in there with the police without a court order, she will produce those documents. She will say he is in a private facility for his own mental health. She will say he is violent, paranoid, and that you are an estranged father causing a scene. The police will look at her paperwork, then they will look at you, and they will walk away. And the moment they leave, she will move him." She turned back to me, her eyes hard. "She will put him in a van and take him to a facility in another state. Or worse, if she feels the walls closing in, if she realizes the money train is stopping, Nash becomes a liability." Accidents happen in places like Sunny Meadows, Harrison. A fall, an overdose, a heart attack. I felt the blood drain from my face. "So you are saying I have to leave him there?" "No," Sarah said, walking back to her desk and sitting down with a decisive thud. "I am saying we need a weapon bigger than her paperwork. We need an emergency ex parte guardianship order. We need a judge to strip her of her rights immediately, without a hearing, based on imminent danger to the ward." She tapped the pile of evidence I had brought. "This is good. The financial fraud establishes motive. The drugs establish abuse. But judges are conservative. They hate stripping rights from spouses. We need this to be airtight. I can draft the petition tonight. I can get it in front of a judge I know first thing tomorrow morning. Judge Holloway. He is tough, but he hates elder and disability abuse. If he sees this, he will sign the order. Tomorrow morning," I repeated. "That is 24 hours." Sarah nodded. 24 hours. And that is the dangerous part. Because Beatrice is smart. She knows you went to the bank. She knows you are suspicious. If she senses you are making a legal move, she will act first. She will liquidate what is left of the accounts, and she will disappear with Nash. We need to freeze her." "Freeze her how?" I asked. "We need a distraction," Sarah said, her eyes narrowing. "We need to give her something she wants more than safety. We need to feed her greed. If she is busy counting her chickens, she won't be watching the fox." I thought about Beatrice. I thought about the way her eyes lit up when I mentioned the Florida house. I thought about her desperation to maintain the facade of the wealthy socialite. I have an idea, I said slowly, the plan forming in my mind like a dark cloud. She wants my money. She thinks I am about to sign over my remaining assets. I told her I would do it Monday. Move it up, Sarah said. Make it tomorrow. Make it a spectacle. I looked at Sarah, understanding dawning on me. A spectacle. Beatrice was a narcissist. She didn't just want money. She wanted to be envied. She wanted an audience. I will throw a party, I said, my voice gaining strength. A 10th anniversary party. It is not their anniversary, but I will say I am confused. I will say I want to celebrate them. I will tell her that at this party, in front of all our friends and business associates, I am going to announce a massive gift. The Florida house, my investment portfolio. Everything. Sarah smiled, and it was a wolfish expression. Perfect. The Trojan horse. You promise her the world. You make it public. She won't run if she thinks she is about to inherit a kingdom. She will be too busy picking out her outfit and gloating to her friends. She will be stuck in that house playing the loving wife waiting for her payday. And while she is doing that, Sarah continued, I will be in Judge Holloway's chambers getting the order. And while she is smiling for the cameras at your party, the police and the paramedics will be rolling towards Sunny Meadows to extract Nash. I leaned forward. Can we time it? Can we time it so the raid happens while the party is ongoing? Sarah looked at me, assessing my resolve. You want to execute her publicly. I want her to fall from the highest possible height, I said coldly. I want her friends to see it. I want her to be standing there waiting for a check, and instead get handcuffs. Sarah nodded. We can do that. But you have to sell it, Harrison. You have to go back to that house tonight and be the doting, senile father-in-law. You have to apologize for the bank incident. You have to grovel. If she suspects for 1 second that you are lucid, the game is over. Can you do that? Can you look the woman who tortured your son in the eye and smile? I thought of Nash in that bed. I thought of the word run scratched into my hand. I can do it, I said. I will give the performance of my life. Good, Sarah said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward her. Then let's write the script. We need a guest list. We need a venue. It has to be at the house. It keeps her contained. Yes, at the house, I agreed. The scene of the crime. Sarah started writing furiously. I will have the paperwork ready by 8 a.m. I will text you a code word when the judge signs the order. Until you get that text, you do not drop the mask. You are the confused, generous old man. I stood up. I felt lighter than I had in years. I finally had a weapon. I wasn't just fighting with my fists anymore. I was fighting with the full weight of the Illinois judicial system. One more thing, Sarah said, looking up. The man who helped you. Leo. Is he safe? He is terrified, I said. But he is inside. He is watching Nash. Tell him to sit tight, Sarah instructed. Tell him tomorrow is Liberation Day. But tell him not to be a hero. If Beatrice moves Nash before we get there, tell Leo to track them, not to stop them. We can't lose the location. I nodded. I will call him from a burner phone. I walked to the door. Sarah stopped me one last time. Harrison, she said, her voice softer now. You are doing the right thing. But be careful. A cornered animal bites. Beatrice is cornered. She just doesn't know it yet. Tonight will be the most dangerous night of your life. I know, I said. I touched the pocket where I kept the picture of Nash. But it will be her last night of freedom. I left the office and stepped into the elevator. As the numbers counted down, I composed my face. I loosened my tie. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I stooped my shoulders. Harrison the Avenger receded. Harrison the Fool returned. I walked out into the street and hailed a cab. I gave the driver the address of the house in Evanston. I was going back into the belly of the beast. I was going back to tell Beatrice that she had won. I was going to offer her everything she ever wanted, just so I could be there to watch it turn to ash in her mouth. The trap was set. Now I just had to lead her into it. The cab ride back to Evanston felt like a funeral procession for the man I used to be. I spent the 30 minutes rehearsing my lines, practicing the tremor in my hands, and forcing my posture to collapse inward. I needed to look like a man defeated by his own mind. When the taxi pulled up to the curb, the house loomed dark and imposing against the twilight sky. It was a beautiful structure, a brick colonial with white pillars, but tonight it looked like the mouth of a beast waiting to swallow me whole. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the foyer. The house was silent, but it was a loaded silence. I could feel her presence. Beatrice was waiting. She was sitting in the living room wingback chair, a glass of white wine in her hand, the bottle already half empty on the side table. She didn't look up when I entered. She just swirled the liquid in her glass, staring at the vortex. "You are late," she said, her voice flat and dangerous. "You said an hour. It has been 4. I took off my hat and held it in both hands, wringing the brim like a nervous schoolboy. "I am sorry, Beatrice," I stammered, letting my voice crack. "I got lost. I took a walk after the bank, and then I couldn't remember which street to turn on. I had to hail a cab. I think my mind is going, Beatrice." "You were right." She looked up, then her eyes narrowing as she assessed me. She was looking for the defiance I had shown on the phone, the spark of rebellion. I gave her none. I gave her only fear and exhaustion. I was so angry at the bank I continued moving a few steps closer, but keeping a respectful distance. I felt like I was losing control, like everything was slipping away from me. I thought if I could just see the numbers, if I could just hold on to the money, I would feel safe again. But I made a fool of myself, didn't I? Sylvia must think I am crazy. Beatrice took a sip of wine, her gaze never leaving my face. "Sylvia thinks you are deteriorating, Harrison. She thinks you are becoming a liability. And honestly, after today, I agree with her. You threatened us. You threatened my livelihood." "I know," I whispered, looking down at the floor. "I am so sorry. I don't want to go to a home, Beatrice. Please." I realized today, walking around confused, that I can't be alone. I need you. I need Nash. She set the glass down. The anger in her face softened, replaced by a smug superiority. She sat back, crossing her legs. "Well, at least you are admitting it. That is the first step. But apologies don't fix the damage you caused, Harrison. You scared me. I have been sitting here thinking that maybe it is not safe for you to be here anymore." I dropped to my knees. It was a physical act of submission that made my old joints scream, but it was necessary. It was the ultimate gesture of surrender. "Please, Beatrice," I begged, looking up at her. "Don't send me away. I will make it right. I have been thinking. You are right. I am too old to manage these assets. The Florida house, the investment portfolio, the bonds. It is too much worry. It is over $2 million just sitting there, and I am terrified I am going to lose it or forget a password." The number hung in the air like perfume. $2 million. I saw her breath hitch. She knew I had money, but she didn't know exactly how much was liquid. Her greed battled with her suspicion. $2 million, she repeated, trying to sound casual. "Yes," I said, rushing the words, "and I want to give it to you. To you and Nash. I want to transfer everything. The deed, the accounts, the whole portfolio. I want you to manage it. You have the power of attorney. You can take care of it. I just want a small allowance. Enough for books and coffee. I just want to rest, Beatrice. I am tired of fighting." Beatrice stood up. She walked over to me and looked down. She was searching for the trap. She was smart, calculating, but she was also arrogant. She believed she had broken me. She believed her threat about the nursing home had shattered my will. "You want to sign everything over?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "but I want to do it right. I want to make amends. I want to host a party." "A party?" she asked, wrinkling her nose. "A celebration," I said, standing up slowly, using the chair for support. "Tomorrow is Saturday. I know it is not the exact date, but it is close enough to your 10th anniversary with Nash. I want to invite your friends, the bank manager Sylvia, the neighbors, your business partners. I want to make a speech. I want to publicly apologize for my behavior and announce that I am handing over the family legacy to you. I want everyone to know that you are the matriarch now, that you are in charge." I watched the gears turn in her head. A party, a public coronation. It appealed to her vanity. She loved being the center of attention. She loved the idea of her rich friends seeing her inherit millions. It would solidify her status. It would wash away any rumors my outburst at the bank might have started. "Tomorrow," she said, checking her mental calendar. "That is very short notice, Harrison. I will pay for everything I promised. We can get the best caterers, urgent rates, champagne, caviar, whatever you want. Just let me do this one last thing for you. Let me leave the stage with dignity, Beatrice. Let me give you your inheritance while I am still lucid enough to enjoy seeing you take it." She smiled then. It was the smile of a cat that had just cornered the canary. It was a cold, triumphant, terrifying smile. "All right, Dad," she said, the word dripping with false sweetness. "If it means that much to you, we can have a party, a transfer of power. It sounds appropriate." "Thank you," I breathed, feigning relief. "Thank you, Beatrice. You won't regret it." "I bet I won't," she said, turning back to her wine. "Now go to bed. I have a lot of calls to make if we are going to pull this off by tomorrow night. And Harrison, yes, don't ever go to the bank again. Next time I won't be so forgiving." "I promise," I said. I shuffled toward the stairs, looking defeated. But as I passed the kitchen island, I paused. Beatrice was already tapping furiously on her phone, likely texting her caterer or her stylist. Her back was to me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small black disc Sarah had given me. It was a high-powered transmitter, no bigger than a quarter, with a magnetic backing. I slid my hand under the marble lip of the breakfast bar, right next to where she usually sat to make her morning coffee. I stuck the device to the metal support bracket. It was invisible unless you were lying on the floor, looking up. I continued up the stairs, my heart pounding a rhythm of war. I went into my room and closed the door, but I didn't lock it. I needed to appear harmless. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the receiver Sarah had given me. It looked like an old transistor radio. I put the earbud in. The sound was crystal clear. I could hear the clink of the wine bottle against the glass. I could hear her humming to herself. Then I heard the sound of a number being dialed. "Hey, baby?" Beatrice's voice came through the earpiece, sultry and excited. "You are not going to believe this." The old man cracked. I held my breath. "Yeah, totally broke," she laughed. "He came home crying, begging me not to put him in a home. He wants to sign over everything. The Florida house. 2 million in investments, all of it. Tomorrow night." There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "No, he is harmless," she reassured him. "He is totally senile. He thinks Nash is still in London. He thinks this is a grand gesture. I am going to throw a party, a big one. You should come. No, don't worry, I will introduce you as my investment advisor. We can celebrate properly after he goes to sleep." She giggled. It was a sound that made my blood boil. "Yeah, I know. It is perfect. We can finally pay off the rest of the gambling debt and get that boat you wanted. We are rich, baby. We are finally free of this dead weight." I took the earbud out. My hand was shaking, but this time it wasn't from acting. It was from pure, unadulterated loathing. She had a lover, a partner in crime, someone she was spending my son's life savings on, a boat, gambling debts. While Nash lay in a bed of his own filth, paralyzed and alone, she called me dead weight. I walked to the window and looked out at the night. The moon was full, illuminating the manicured lawn I had paid for. Beatrice thought she had won the lottery. She thought tomorrow was her coronation. She didn't know that she was planning her own funeral. I lay down on the bed fully clothed. I knew I wouldn't sleep. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, visualizing every step of the next 24 hours. Sarah getting the court order, Leo watching the facility, the police mobilizing, and me standing on a stage with a microphone ready to drop the guillotine. Tomorrow, Beatrice would get her party. She would get her audience, and she would get exactly what she deserved. The backyard of the Evanston estate had been transformed into a theater of excess. White silk tents rippled in the evening breeze, and strings of Edison bulbs cast a warm, golden glow over the manicured lawn. A string quartet played softly in the corner, competing with the clinking of crystal champagne flutes and the murmur of 50 of Chicago's social elite. Beatrice had outdone herself. She was wearing a shimmering silver gown that hugged her figure perfectly, and she moved through the crowd like a queen greeting her subjects. By her side stood a man I recognized from the surveillance audio. He was tall with slicked back hair and a suit that was too shiny. She introduced him to everyone as her financial advisor, but I saw the way his hand lingered on the small of her back. I stood by the open French doors, watching the spectacle. I was wearing my best suit, the one I used to wear to federal court. I had shaved and stood upright, discarding the stoop of the senile old man. Tonight, I did not need to hide. Tonight, I was the executioner. At 8 o'clock sharp, Beatrice clinked a silver spoon against her glass. The music died down. The crowd turned their attention to the small stage that had been erected near the pool. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice." Beatrice beamed, her voice amplified by the microphone. "Tonight is a very special night. As many of you know, my husband Nash is away in London serving our country in a critical infrastructure project. He sends his love to everyone." A polite ripple of applause went through the crowd. Beatrice wiped a fake tear from her eye. "It is hard being apart. But tonight my father-in-law Harrison has decided to make a beautiful gesture to ensure our family's future. He wants to honor Nash's hard work and my dedication to this family." She beckoned me to the stage. "Come up here, Harrison." I walked up the steps. The spotlight hit me blindingly bright. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Sylvia, the bank manager, looking smug. I saw the neighbors who had ignored me for years. And near the back in the shadows, I saw a woman with a sharp bob haircut and a briefcase, Sarah Jenkins. She gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod. The judge had signed the order. The cavalry was here. I took the microphone from Beatrice. Her hand was warm and sweaty. She whispered in my ear, "Don't screw this up, old man. Just read the script." I smiled at her, a genuine cold smile. I cleared my throat. The feedback from the speakers whined for a second, silencing the last of the chatter. "My daughter-in-law is right," I said, my voice strong and clear, devoid of any tremor. "Tonight is about the truth. It is about legacy. And it is about giving people exactly what they deserve." Beatrice frowned, slightly confused by my tone. I had gone off script. "For 2 years I have been told my son is in London," I continued. "I have been told he is happy, successful. But I realize today that I have never actually seen him. So I decided to prepare a special presentation. A message from London, if you will." Beatrice's eyes widened. She reached for the microphone. "Harrison, what are you doing? We don't have a video." I ignored her. I pointed to the massive projection screen that had been set up for the slideshow of stock photos she had prepared. "Hit it," I commanded. The screen flickered to life. But it wasn't footage of Big Ben or the Thames. It was grainy black and white footage. It was the kitchen of this very house recorded from the camera I had planted under the breakfast bar 24 hours ago. The audio boomed through the high-fidelity speakers crystal clear. "He is totally senile." It was Beatrice's voice echoing across the garden. "He thinks Nash is still in London. We can finally pay off the gambling debt and get that boat." The crowd gasped. A hush fell over the lawn so profound you could hear the ice melting in the buckets. On the screen, Beatrice was seen pouring wine and kissing the man she called her financial advisor. Beatrice froze on stage, her face draining of all color. She looked at the screen, then at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Turn it off!" she screamed, lunging for the laptop connected to the projector. But the video changed. It cut to a different scene. This one was handheld, shaky footage taken by a cell phone. It was the footage Leo had secretly recorded months ago, the footage he had kept as insurance. It showed a small, dark room. A man lay in a bed, his limbs thin and wasted. Beatrice was standing over him. She was shouting, "Stop crying, you pathetic vegetable." Her voice on the recording was a demonic shriek. "You think I care that you are in pain? You are earning me $10,000 a month just by lying there. So shut up and take your medicine." The video showed her forcing a pill into the mouth of the man in the bed. The man choked and sputtered. The camera zoomed in. Even emaciated, even broken, there was no mistaking him. It was Nash. A woman in the front row dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the patio stones. Beatrice wasn't moving anymore. She was trembling violently, staring at her own monstrosity projected 10 feet tall. "That is a fake," she screeched, spinning around to face the crowd, her eyes wild. "It is a deep fake. He made it up. My husband is in London." I took the microphone back. "Is he?" I asked. I raised my hand and pointed to the side gate of the garden. "Then who is that?" The heavy oak gates swung open with a groan. Flashing blue and red lights from the driveway cut through the darkness, bathing the party in a strobe of emergency colors. But it wasn't the police who entered first. It was Leo. He was pushing a wheelchair, and in the wheelchair sat a man. He was clean-shaven now, thanks to the nurses Sarah had sent. He was dressed in a suit that hung loosely on his skeletal frame. He looked weak. He looked exhausted. But his head was up, and his eyes burned with a fire that no drug could extinguish anymore. Nash Stone had come home. A collective sound of horror went through the guests. Sylvia, the bank manager, covered her mouth with her hand. The financial advisor turned and started to edge toward the shadows, but found his path blocked by 2 uniformed officers. Leo pushed the wheelchair right up to the edge of the stage. Beatrice stared down at her husband. The husband she had buried alive. Nash. She whispered the name escaping her lips like a curse. Nash gripped the armrests of his chair. His knuckles turned white. He took a deep breath, his chest rattling. He had not spoken clearly in 2 years. His vocal cords were atrophied from disuse and sedation. But tonight he found his voice. He raised a shaking finger and pointed it directly at her heart. "You," he rasped. The word was quiet, but in the silence of the garden, it sounded like a thunderclap. He took another breath, fighting the weakness, fighting the memories of the dark room. Murderer. He didn't scream it. He stated it. It was a fact. A judgment. Beatrice broke. The facade shattered completely. She didn't try to explain. She didn't try to lie. She ran. She hiked up her silver gown and leaped off the side of the stage, sprinting toward the back exit that led to the alley. She knocked over a waiter, sending a tray of hors d'oeuvres flying. She was fast fueled by the adrenaline of a cornered rat. She made it 10 yards. Sarah Jenkins stepped out from behind a trellis of climbing roses. She didn't look like a lawyer in that moment. She looked like a linebacker. She didn't tackle Beatrice. She simply held up a piece of paper and signaled. Two plainclothes detectives stepped out from the shrubbery. Beatrice slammed into them. They grabbed her arms efficiently, spinning her around. "Beatrice Stone," one of the detectives said, his voice bored and professional. "You are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse, and the unlawful imprisonment of a dependent adult." "Get off me!" she screamed, kicking and thrashing her elegant bun unraveling. "You cannot do this. I have power of attorney. I own this house, not anymore," Sarah said calmly, walking up to her. "Judge Holloway revoked your guardianship at 8:30 this morning. You have power over nothing, Beatrice, not even your own shoelaces." They handcuffed her. The metal click echoed across the lawn. They dragged her past the stunned guests, past the pool she had renovated with stolen money, past the husband she had tried to erase. As they hauled her away, she locked eyes with me. "I will kill you, Harrison," she shrieked, her face twisted into a mask of pure hate. "You ruined everything." I stood on the stage looking down at her. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound, icy satisfaction. "I didn't ruin anything, Beatrice," I said into the microphone so everyone could hear. "I just checked the books, and you came up short." The police shoved her into the back of a squad car. Her lover, the advisor, was already being cuffed by another team near the buffet table. I walked down the stairs. My legs felt heavy, but my heart was light. I walked over to the wheelchair. I knelt down on the grass, ruining my suit pants. I looked at my son. He was crying silently, tears tracking through the clean shave. I grabbed his hand. "I told you," I whispered. "I told you I would bring the cavalry." Nash looked at me. He squeezed my hand. It was weak, but it was there. "Dad," he croaked. "Let's go home, son," I said. "The real home." Leo stepped back, giving us space. The guests were beginning to disperse, escorted out by the police who needed to secure the crime scene. The party was over. The lie was over. I stood up and put my hand on the back of the wheelchair. I turned my back on the stunned crowd, on the half-eaten food, on the shattered illusions of the Evanston elite. I pushed my son toward the house. We had a lot of work to do. We had a life to rebuild. But for the first time in 2 years, we were doing it together. The sound of water lapping against the dock was the only noise for miles. It was a crisp autumn morning, 6 months after the night that ended my old life. The house on Lake Michigan was smaller than the estate in Evanston. It didn't have marble floors or crystal chandeliers. It was made of cedar and stone, and it smelled of pine needles and wood smoke. It was a place for healing. I sat on the deck, a mug of black coffee steaming in the cool air. On the table in front of me was a stack of legal documents, the final debris of the war I had waged. Beatrice Stone had pleaded guilty. Confronted with the video evidence, the financial records, and the testimony of the staff from Sunny Meadows, her high-priced defense attorney had advised her to cut a deal. She was currently serving 20 years in a federal correctional facility for fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse, and the unlawful imprisonment of a dependent adult. Her lover, the financial advisor, was in the cell block next door, facing charges for money laundering and conspiracy. The house in Evanston was sold. The proceeds went to paying off the debts she had incurred and funding Nash's recovery. We didn't want it anymore. It was a monument to a lie. This place, this quiet cabin by the water, was clean. I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate steps, the rhythmic thud of rubber on wood. I turned around. Nash was walking toward me. He was using a walker, his knuckles white as he gripped the aluminum frame, but he was upright. He was no longer the skeleton I had found in that dark room. He had gained 30 pounds. His color was back, a healthy flush in his cheeks from the exertion. His hair was thick and dark, again trimmed neatly. He stopped a few feet away, breathing hard, but smiling. It was a real smile. Not the drugged grimace of the past, but the smile of the son I remembered. "Morning, Dad," he said. His voice was still raspy, a permanent scar from the months of silence, but it was clear. The slur was almost gone. "Morning, son," I said, standing up to pull a chair out for him. "You are up early." "Where is Leo?" Leo had stayed with us. He was no longer a janitor or a delivery driver. He was Nash's personal nurse and rehabilitation coach. He was family. "He is making breakfast," Nash said, easing himself into the chair with a groan of effort that was more satisfaction than pain. "He says I need protein if I am going to walk to the end of the dock by Christmas." "You will make it," I said, pouring him a cup of coffee. "You are stubborn, just like your mother." Nash took the cup, his hand steady. He looked out at the lake, the sun reflecting off the water in blinding sparks. He took a sip and sighed, the sound of pure contentment. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly, not looking at me. "You do not have to thank me, Nash." "I do," he insisted, turning his gaze to meet mine. His eyes were clear, sharp, intelligent. The fog was gone. "Dad, you saved my life. Literally, I was drowning in that place. I was trapped in my own body, watching the days blur into weeks, into months. I thought I was going to die there. I thought you had forgotten me. I thought she had won." I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "I never forgot you. Not for a second. I didn't see the truth fast enough." "You saw it when it mattered," he said. "You saw the package. You saw the lies. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself." He gestured to the papers on the table. "Is that the last of it?" I nodded. "The final restitution order. The court seized Beatrice's hidden accounts. We got most of it back, Nash. The retirement fund is restored. The equity is recovered. You are going to be okay financially." Nash shook his head. "I don't care about the money, Dad. Keep it. Donate it. Burn it. I don't care. What do you care about?" He looked at the walker, then at the lake, then back at me. "I care that I am sitting here drinking coffee. I care that I can feel the sun on my face. I care that I have a father who loved me enough to become a forensic accountant, a spy, and a commando all in 1 week." He chuckled, a dry sound. "You know, for a retired guy, you are pretty dangerous." I smiled, closing the folder on the table. It was a satisfying sound, the final snap of the latch. The case was closed. "I just hate bad bookkeeping," I said lightly. "And Beatrice had terrible books." Nash laughed, a full, genuine laugh that startled a flock of ducks off the water. "You know, Dad," he said, his expression turning serious again, "you always talked about traveling when you retired. Seeing the world. London, Paris, Rome." I nodded. "We talked about it. But life got in the way." Nash leaned forward. "You didn't go to London. You didn't go anywhere. You stayed right here in Illinois. But Dad, you went on the longest journey of anyone I know. You went into the dark and you pulled me out. That is better than any trip." I looked at my son. I saw the scars of his ordeal, but I also saw the strength that had forged them. He was a survivor. We were survivors. "I didn't need to see the Eiffel Tower," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I just needed to see you. Here. Safe." Nash squeezed my hand. "Well, we are here, and we are safe." Leo stepped out onto the deck carrying a tray of eggs and toast. "Breakfast is served, gentlemen," he announced, setting it down. "And Nash, after this we have leg presses. No excuses." Nash groaned playfully. "You are a tyrant, Leo. Only because I care." Leo grinned, pouring himself a cup. I watched them. I watched the steam rise from the coffee. I watched the sunlight dance on the water. I watched my son eat, rebuild his strength, reclaim his life. I picked up the legal folder and dropped it onto the floor beside my chair. It was just paper now. History. I picked up my coffee and toasted my son. To the future, I said. Nash clinked his cup against mine. To the truth, he replied. And to fathers who don't quit, Leo added, raising his mug. We drank in the crisp morning air. The nightmare was over. Beatrice was a memory fading in a federal cell. The pain was receding. I looked at Nash, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't see a victim. I didn't see a ghost. I saw my son. And that was the only view I would ever need. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments. What is the furthest you would go to save someone you love? I read every single comment. Until next time, stay safe, trust your gut, and never underestimate the power of a father's love.